Another Coffee with Coach Rodhe, and today we have what I thought would never happen, instant coffee, okay? In previous episodes, I've said instant crap, don't even touch it. So in my process of, we'll say, collecting all the coffees from Black Rifle, I purchased their black powder instant coffee. Most of it was because of my wife was still teaching school, and so I was waiting for her to have some instant coffee in the room, and so we tried it, and it is fantastic. It creams up. It almost gives you like a crema, as you saw in the video, similar to good espresso. It does not taste like espresso. It has a very smooth, nutty, creamy flavor. It's very pleasant on the palate, and the convenient factor and the execution of a pure coffee taste is amazing in this product. I was blown away. I was blown away so much when the box is empty. I was so blown away the first time I tried it that I exclusively drank the black powder for like 3 days because it was so good. Now, when I was traveling the world, I kept instant coffee packs in my emergency kit in the event that I couldn't get to a coffee shop before competition, and I would just throw a few of those babies in a cup of water and down it. And back then, those were Starbucks brand, and those were horrible. These are amazing. Highly recommend this one from Black Rifle for anybody. The mug today, we've got the Black Rifle coffee, kind of just a standard logo cup. It's a ceramic. It's got a nice white inside. I picked this one for the instant coffee today so we could see what's going on in there. It's nice. The rounded handle kind of tends to have the cup slouch down a bit, so it puts a little more pressure on the wrist than other mugs. But in terms of the size and shape, it's a nice cup to drink out of. We're going to talk about some podcasts today. For the last 4 months, I think from September to December, I was a sponsor on the Refined Savage podcast with Mark Valenti. It's an amazing podcast. If you want to hear stories of ancient man and treasure hunting and sports science and strongman training, head over to his podcast. He's got a lot of phenomenal guests on there. I think I did an episode a few years ago. I will put a link in the bottom for that. Also, I'll say Judd Logan was on there twice now. He has some great podcasts on there. I would highly recommend those two for sure. And now at the start of the new year, we are switching gears and we are sponsoring Throw Big, Throw Far podcast. And they just released their first episode. Okay, so we're a sponsor for the podcast for this year. And their first episode is with Tom Walsh. I think they're going to release my episode pretty soon, I think. We'll also have another podcast on there. Joe Frontier is the man who does the podcast, and he was on the phone with Tom, and we had a scheduled time for him to call me for the podcast, and I kept getting pushed back because he was on the phone with Tom Walsh. No problem, I get it, right? So I just listened to the first 15 minutes of Tom's podcast, and I found it very interesting. We'll just touch on this a little bit here. Tom, the first time I met him, I believe was in Glasgow for the 2014 Commonwealth Games. He kicked my butt. I was recovering from an injury, and I was not ready yet for high-level competition. But I was impressed with him as the mental side of his approach to the sport. I really appreciate it. I have a lot of respect for Tom. I also knew his technical development from over the years, and I thought he was a fantastic thrower biomechanically in terms of being very efficient. He's had some years that were better than others, but within the first 15 minutes, he and Joe get into his technique. And a few years ago, I released a lecture on the development of the modern rotational shot putter, okay, and looking at why are we seeing such big distances and such consistently big distances. And I looked at who the players were and looked at the timelines, and I came up with Bondarchuk came to North America. He taught Dylan Armstrong and I the bent leg flat rotation technique, and then based on the places that we did training camps and the athletes and the coaches that we trained around, that influenced the technical model change in North America and a lot of the modern day throwers, okay? And we have that timeline and all the people in the right places, and we ran the data and to prove that the technique is the reason for all the distance changes and the higher percentage rates. And that, of course, assuming that we have the cleanest age of shot put in history. But in the lecture series, I state that Jack O'Gill and Tom Walsh developed outside of my timeline because we never did a training camp around their coaches or around them as athletes. And so they had similar technique developments as all the other players in the study, but they were outside the timeline and I didn't know how they were connected. Well, Tom comes out in this podcast with Throw Big, Throw Far, and he says that for a long time he was trying to throw like Dylan Armstrong. So there's the connection. They were watching our group from a distance and liking what we were doing and trying to replicate that. Now, something I think is interesting is Tom states that his interpretation of how Dylan threw, and he says it worked really well for Dylan because he was really strong, but Tom doesn't consider himself a strong thrower, and so the technique wasn't working for him, and so he had made some changes. And some of the changes he cites are actually opposite from what I see as proof of the reason he throws far. So I think there's a little bit of loss, some things being lost in the translation there. Certainly, I think the way he described Dylan's technique is a bit inaccurate, at least as to what we were trying to do. I know Dylan, when he would get in high pressure situations, would kind of stiffen up a bit and rely on his strength. But Tom says that when doing the bent leg flat rotation technique, he couldn't find stretch, right? He couldn't feel stretch in the rotation. And I find that very interesting because that's the number one component that we, Bondarchuk, Armstrong, and I tried to find in the rotation, and that I completely relied on, and what I teach my athletes is this stretch for ballistic, long final. And so I think there's just a little bit of loss in translation there, but very, very interesting connecting the dots it's amazing. You got to go a long time around the world and across many decades sometimes to connect the dots. And so I was excited to see that. And Tom cites himself as not a very strong thrower. I was not a strong thrower. I think we had a maximum hang snatch of 100 kilos. The most I ever bench press was 415 pounds, so like 190 kilos ish, and that was off a pad. That wasn't even stripped to the chest. And so I was not a strong thrower, and the only reason I threw as far as I did was because of the technique and because of the ridiculous amounts of stretch that I got with the technique. So maybe Tom and I have to sit down and hash some of that stuff out here. Okay, so Throw Big, Throw Far podcast. We're sponsored there this year. Support his podcast. He's got some great lineup for the throwing community. Okay, he's got some great guests in the past, but his lineup this year is a real smash. So be sure to check that out. We're gonna go back real quick to the Jolly Big Throws Clinic and do a few more of these questionnaires. Give some comments here. Let's see here. There were various perspectives from all the different throws coaches at our clinic, reinforcing similar principles. And yes, that is something I tried to do in bringing coaches together, is to not have polarizing views, but all very similar concepts, so that there's an easy transition from coach to coach. And we make our decisions on what we present trying to bring the best forms of technique down to the athlete's level. Let's see here. This person said they want to see us do it next year, perhaps a bigger crowd. Yes, we'll be hitting some more marketing. We want to double it. We want to at least double it for next year. So put it on your calendar. Christmas time, Youngstown State University, most likely. We'll be doing a camp clinic competition. Let's see here. We'll skip that one. This person really liked the size of the groups, the athlete to instructor ratio. Like I said, for the main coaches, we had like the main coach for maybe 10 or 12 athletes at the most. Some of the stations were only 2 or 6 athletes, and then we had some volunteer coaches around as well. This person says they want to see more college throwers there. Yeah, let's talk about that. You know what, that's it for today. I'm gonna get on a soapbox here. Okay. I personally invited every single D3 program in Michigan, Ohio, Western PA, and a few places in Indiana, I think. Generally a circle around the camp, offering a special rate to D3 throwers, D3 coaches, because I'm a D3 guy. We had one person come for the competition. Fred Brickner, University of Mount Union. Thank you, Fred, for coming and having a Division III representation at the Big Throws Clinic. It was started by Division III throwers and is being maintained by Division III throwers, and the success that we have had because of our roots in Division III. So next year, I want to see D3 people there. I want to see D3 people come and learn from the people who have been where you are now at D3 schools and gone on for more and bigger things in the sport. Okay, we need to change that. We need to get more people from the Ohio area, Michigan, Western PA, lower level colleges to be investing and infusing in their careers. Okay, that's it for the rant and lecture for Division III throwers and Division III programs. We switched it up today. If you didn't notice, we did our episode from the new circle we made. I couldn't resist. We had to do an episode while I was still in the gym. I will do some video, pictures, pass-arounds of what we made here. I will not ship these across the country, okay? So if you are within a reasonable driving distance and you want one made for yourself, let me know. I take a lot of pride in having hand craftsmanship and coming up with unique items based on the client and their uses. And yeah, so if you think you want one made, get in contact with me. We can talk about price. The price, everyone says, what's the price? What's the price? Well, the price varies on what you want, okay? So if you're interested, give me a call. We'll work something out. Yeah, I really enjoy doing it. So, okay, enjoy the video pass around of the circle, and we'll see you next time for Coffee with Coach Rodhe. Thank you.